yourself, what are these young people trying to tell us with their lives?
All right, guys, you're off your ride, but something that people don't really talk about much, it's a dirty word. No, it's not. Gearing. Talk about gearing.
Well, you know, I've been coaching for a long time, and I'm always surprised when I have athletes that have been riding their bikes for years, and I'll say to them, hey, what's your easiest gear? This is a really hilly course. They'll say to me, oh, I have no idea. How do I even find that out? So let's have a little lesson on gearing. So the gearing is this drivetrain here, part of your bike. So obviously you have your chain, and you have your front chain ring here. You've got your big ring and your little ring. And most bikes with 700C wheels, these standard wheels, have a 53 tooth big ring. That's this big ring here, and let's shift down so we can look at the small ring.
Notice the circus bike.
And then when you shift down, so you can see this is 53, and it actually even says on here 53, so you don't even have to count the teeth, because let me tell you, I've done that before just to make sure it really has 53, and you lose count easily.
You've counted the teeth?
I've counted the teeth. I'm like that. So then, of course, we've got our easier one, and that's the one that's hidden behind it, and that's the small ring. And generally speaking, on most bikes, that has 39 teeth. I know, Diesel, it's very exciting. Most bikes come with a small chain ring that has 39 teeth. Some people will ride one with 42, but 39 is really probably your best bet, because that will give you some easier gears if you're going uphill.
So what's the difference between 39 and 42? Why would you want a 39 versus a 42?
Well, I don't really know why people ride 42. I think they think they're macho and they don't really need easier gears. But I think 39 for just about anybody is going to be, unless you're doing everything downhill, 39
But
is
wouldn't
good.
you also say, we had you switch out to a 54 on your front ring, so when you're a higher end rider and you're in some of these races, if you get your big chain, you can get those bigger gears by getting a bigger front chain ring, so that when you're going downhill or you're maybe caught in a little bit of a tailwind, you can still push some bigger gears, because you were losing some speed in areas where you just didn't need it, and you put the bigger chain ring on.
Well, I still only have a 53 on
Well,
that.
this is your...
Yeah.
So the more teeth, the harder it is to pedal, basically.
Well, in the front.
In the front.
In the front.
Right.
The more teeth, the harder it is to pedal.
And once you get past 53 on the front chain ring, a lot of times you can have issues dropping down to your smaller chain ring, so you will need to get a...
That's why some people go to a 42.
Yeah, because they have
Because then the jump isn't as big. But really a 42 for most people isn't going to give you easy enough gearing, so I would say stick with the 39. Yeah. And 53, 54 if you've got massive quads.
So 39 on the small ring, 53 on the big ring.
Yeah.
Quads right there, so you know.
Yeah, he thinks he does. He even rides a 55.
Well,
But he also
who
rides
gets
it.
dropped on the downhills?
Well, you also have like 80 pounds on me.
Does it also depend on what race you're doing? If it's hilly versus, if you're doing Ironman Florida versus doing like Coeur d'Alene?
Well, that really a hilly course you're going to want as easy a gear as possible, and so the 39 would be great. For a flat course like Florida, you're almost never going to be in your small chain ring anyway, so it's negligible.
Okay.
So let's talk about a compact
Let's
crank.
talk about that, yeah.
The compact crank, so instead of having a 53-39,
Yep.
most compacts come as a 50-34. So your big ring and your small ring are a lot smaller, and that gives you much easier gears to spin in. So instead of having a 39 and whatever you have on the back, which we'll talk about shortly, you'll have a 34, and the gear ratio is it's way easier, and it will allow you to spin up almost anything.
Now, while we're at it, let me ask you this question. I was talking to Christy Wellington, and she loves pushing a big gear, and Lance Armstrong is almost the exact opposite. He said, spin to win, spin to win. So a lot of spinning, a lot less gearing. Where do you guys stand on that?
I tend to push bigger gears. I have a slower cadence. I don't know if it's necessarily pushing bigger gears, but I ride with a slower cadence. And I think for me, it's more, I don't know, it's just something I developed over time. Your heart rate's a lot lower, and if you can develop your muscles to be strong enough to handle the lower cadence, then it works. But some people, you have a little bit of a higher cadence.
I have a little bit of a higher, but it's still fairly low.
Yeah,
most
fairly
people
low.
talk about a cadence of about 88 to 90 is sort of the ideal cadence. I ride more like 80. And really, you just have to find your sweet spot. People run at different cadences and swim at different cadences, so cycling is going to be the same way. I don't think there's really anything that you can say is ideal for any given person. I mean, I know from training with my power where my sweet spot is.
Plus also, you know, in longer races like Ironman, it's good to, you know, stand up, sit down, and change your gearing a little bit so your legs aren't just going through this repetitive, you know, motion for 112 miles, especially on a flat course like Florida or something like that.
All right, so this is your rear derailleur here, and this is your rear cassette. And most bikes now come with 10 speeds, so that you'll have 10 cogs. So each one of these parts of the cassette is called the cog, and they can come in a variety of sizes. So when they talk about a cassette being 1123, that means that the range is the smallest one here would be 11, and the biggest one in the back would be 23, and then there's different cogs in between. I think this one here is actually 1126, so it gives me a great range. So opposite to the front here, the less teeth you have, the harder the gear. So an 11 here is going to be, so if I was an 11 and in my big chainring, that would be my hardest gear. And
it goes to 11.
Huh?
Like Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
It goes to 11.
It goes to 11.
Yeah, your bike goes to 11.
It goes to 11. It's pretty awesome. And then back here is a 26, so that when I'm climbing and I'm in my small ring in the 26, I've got really easy, well, it depends on the climb really, but for most climbs around here, it's
not Devil's Gulch.
Not Devil's Gulch, but for most climbs around here, it's ample gearing. And then, you know, in between, it goes about maybe 11, 12, 13, 15, I mean, I don't exactly know. But, you know, the range here is ample for almost anything I'm doing. I've got enough gears for the flats, for the climbs, most of the downhills.
So when someone asks you what's your easiest gear, you're going to say 3926.
My easiest gear is a 3926. My hardest gear, 1153. And these are really important things to know, because a lot of times you talk to somebody and they say, oh man, I can't get over these climbs, my cadence is like 40. And you know, if you look at your cassette and you only have a 23, well, you have lots of room to make that easier with a 25, a 26, a 27. So that's why it's really important to know your gearing. I almost always run this 1126 cog set because it just gives you such a variety of gears that, you know, there's just no reason to run anything else. I mean, you know, the 11 is fantastic, and the 26, I mean, most of the time you're not going to use it in a race unless you're doing something very hilly. But, you know, it's just nice to have that whole range there.